used update, but actually don't have the table in database, right? If I have no table in database, when I'm executing my code for first time, then what should be the value I have to add here? Create is the value I have to add. But what I'm doing now, I'm just writing update in place of create. It will work on MySQL, no issue for me. But on some databases, update does not work initially. From next time it will work. Initially you tried create, then next you have to change to update. So if it is MySQL database, it will work even for the initial time also, first time also. Means even update also can be able to create the tables. So let's check once and we'll go further. Yeah. Basically what happened here, it's first creating the table, then it is inserting. So it update value works for both creating the table also. But don't expect the same thing in every database. On some databases, update does not work like this. So if update is not working, at initial time, what is the value you have to set? Create. And from the next time onwards, you can change the value as update. Okay. Yeah, now we can see that there is a record inserted. Let's see. At least 2 records I want. So I just want to use the next number as 22022. Okay, I would like to use the name as Sunny. I would like to use a marks as 500. Okay, I want to run this application again. Now it is directly only inserting, right? It is not creating the new table again. So what is the value? What are the 2 records I have now is Rahul and Sunny. Enough. Now let us perform the other operations too. See here. In my DAO, today we are writing some enhancement. Yesterday we have only one operation created, that is save student. Now I want to, okay, now I want to create a method to load the student, or we can say to fetch the student. So what I want to say is return type is a student, method name is load student, and I would like to load based on the ID of the student. Okay. What is the operation next I'm performing here? I want to perform which operation now? Load student. Okay. This is the operation, load student operation I want to perform in my DAO. Now let us go to DAO implementation class and we will write logic for this load student. Now we are overriding which method now? Load student method we are overriding. Yes, we will override this method. What is the requirement here? What I want to do in load student? I want to load a student based on ID. Okay. So here only I'm explaining. In order to load the student, I'm writing a comment here. For the comment, there are 2 methods given. One is load method. This is for lazy loading. There is a get method, which is for early loading. And this is a most important question that you are facing an interview. What is the difference between load and get methods of Hibernate? What is the difference between load and get methods of Hibernate is a very, very important question for an interview. In an interview point of view, this question is very commonly asked question. Okay, right? Load and get. Load method is a lazy loading operation. Get method is a early loading operation. It means if it is a load method, what happens in load method is first, Hibernate will create a proxy object without loading the real object from the database. And it will simply return the proxy object only. But whenever you are accessing the data of the proxy object, then Hibernate will load the real data from database. So directly it will not load the real data from database. Instead, it creates a proxy object that comes under lazy loading operation. In early loading operation, what Hibernate will immediately will fetch the data from database. It will go to the database. It will load the object from database. That's all. This is called what operation? Early loading. Okay, good. There is a method called load method and there is another method called get method. Okay. For an example, observe here. If I want to call load method or get method, you have to pass two arguments. Okay. First argument is your class name. Your class name dot class. First argument. Second argument is ID. ID means primary key value. ID value. Okay. But if I want to call this method or this method, and if I want to get the data from database, if I want to load an object from database, or if I want to do any operations like a DML operations like inserting or updating or deleting, first of all, what is needed in Hibernate is session. Session represents connection with the database. So in Hibernate applications, what is required is session is required. Session is important. Without a session of Hibernate, we cannot perform any database operations. So now what is needed to perform this load or get operation? Session is required. So how can I create session? Yes, I can create the session through session factory. Session factory. Okay. Session equal to what? Factory dot open session. Okay. You have a doubt? Already session we have created here. Yes, we have created there. But in which method we have created it? In save student. But now I am in which method? Load student. So the same session I cannot use here. So I need one more session. I need one more session. Yes. Session equal to factory dot open session. Yes. Here I'm just removing factory dot close because I need one more method also, right? Session equal to factory dot open session. Next, transaction is optional. What is optional? Transaction is optional. When transaction object is required in Hibernate, Hibernate can perform insert, update, delete. Three operations. What are the three? Insert, update, and delete. Hibernate can perform these three operations within a transaction. But what operation we are doing now? We are doing what operation? Select operation. So select operation doesn't need a transaction. It is optional. I don't want to create a transaction object. I don't want to create a transaction object. I don't want to create a transaction object. So directly I'm writing like this now. Student stu equal to session dot get student dot class comma SID. I am passing that ID as a parameter. Na? This is going to be the primary key value. Okay. Two parameters. Na? What's the first argument? Class name dot class. What is our Pojo class name? Student dot class. Next one is ID value. What's the ID value I'm passing? SID. SID is a parameter. I got the get method over here. Now return STU. And before that, before return, I want to say session dot close. Okay. So if I read this statement after return statement, if I move this line after return, what happens if I move this line after return? It won't execute, na? After return statement, you cannot read any next statement. If you write any next statement after return statement in a method, you'll get an error, compile time error, because it won't execute. You are getting error at line number 62. Now this is correct. Okay, we did this. Now I want to call this method from tester. So I want to keep this code in comment. Okay, I want to keep this code in comment because we have already tested it. Which operation we have already tested? Which operation we have already tested? We have already tested the insert operation. Now I want to test the load student select operation. Correct. Observe here. Student stud equal to reference variable name is your choice. DAO dot load student of 11011. Which student I want to load? With an ID. What is ID of the student? 11011. I want to load the student with ID 11011. Yeah. I'll go to my student class. I want to go to my student class. I want to override a toString method so that I can display the student object directly. Right? You know, toString method. Now, which method I'm overriding? toString method I'm overriding in this class. If I override toString method, then I can directly display the object. I can able to display the object directly now. Right. System.out.println of stud. That's all. Let's run this code. You can see here, Hibernate has executed one query now. Which query it is? Select query. Select query. Okay, right? Very good. From which table? TBL underscore student with a where condition SID equal to question mark. Okay, right? So this is alias name, nothing but reference name. Like when we are creating a query, join query, we are writing, okay, EMP, E, comma, DEPT, D like that we are writing now. Here, what is the name that Hibernate took? Student 0 underscore like that. That is Hibernate, which we are nothing to worry on that. Okay, right? Very good. Finally, what is displayed here? Student data is displayed. What is the ID of the student? 11011. What is the name of the student? Rahul. Gender is male. Marks are 600. So which method I have called in my code first of all? Which method I have called in my DO class? Get method I have called. Which method I have called? Get method I called, not the load. I call the get method, but not the load method. Got it, right? But what is another method I can call here? Load. What happens when I call load method? Load method can perform lazy loading. Get method can perform what? Early loading. One method can perform lazy loading. Another method can perform early loading. Which method can perform lazy loading? Load method. Lazy loading means what? First, Hibernate will create a proxy object and will return the proxy object without loading the real object from the database. Okay. How does I know that Hibernate is not loaded the real object from the database? For that, you observe your console. On the console, if there is no select query, executed on the database, what you can understand? When select query is not executed on database, Hibernate is not selecting the object from database, no? Yes. Correct. Hibernate is not selecting the object from database means what? It has created the proxy object. That's what the proof. Let's see the proof here. Observe here. One thing. I'll tell you why I'm keeping this one line in comment currently. SOP statement I kept in comment, but first I want to show the query. Okay, I want to show the query. Which method I called here? Load method. I want to call load method, not get method. Okay, load. Load method I want to call. I changed my logic, right? Now let us run. Now see the console. On console, are you finding any select query? No. Am I right? Correct. Why I am not selecting? Why I am not getting a select query now on my console? Why I am not getting? Because really Hibernate has not selected the object from the database. What it has done? It has just created the proxy object, but not loading the real object. Got my point? Right. Means how can you identify whether an object is early loaded from DB or lazy loaded from DB? Yes, guys. Write in chat box. Yeah. How do you know whether an object is early loaded from database or lazy loaded from database? Yeah. How can I prove that yes, Hibernate has not loaded the object from DB, from the database? Because I'm not going to get the select query now. Okay. Which method I have called? I have called which method there? Load method I have called. Load method can perform what operation? Lazy loading operation, right? Not early loading. It is a lazy loading operation. Correct? Yes. Let's move on. Get the point clearly. I'll tell you now. Listen to me. In my application, observe here. First here I'm calling load student method. Na? Tell me in the load student method, which method of Hibernate I'm calling? Load method. Na? After load method called, what is happened next? Session is closed means what? Connection is also closed to the database. Na? Very good. Now coming to the point. After closing the session, what I'm returning? Student object to the client. I'm storing in a variable called stud. When I'm displaying the student object, displaying the object means what? I'm accessing the data of the object. Na? Am I right or not? Yes. So you have to apply some brain here to understand it. You have to utilize some percentage of your brain to understand it now. Okay. Point is, if I am, for example, I am displaying the object. Displaying the object is nothing but what I want to display the content of the object. But what object is given to my tester class, my client? Proxy. Proxy object does not contain content, no data. Only ID will be there. Only just ID only available in the proxy object. 101111 ID is there, but there is no data. There is no name Rahul, no salary, so no marks, no gender. Only ID will be there in the proxy. Proxy contains only ID. But now when I display, it should display the ID, name, male, that is gender, and marks. But this object has only ID, since it is a proxy. What a proxy object contains? Just a ID of the object. That's it. Primary key value. Right? Now what happens when I am trying to print it? Hibernate should go to database again to select the data. But in order to select the data from database, connection is required now. But already in my DAO class, what happened here? Session is closed. Session is closed means connection is closed. If there is no connection with the database, then Hibernate cannot select the data from database. Na? Very good. Observe here. Observe here. Let me run this. Okay, I got an exception called lazy initialization exception. Could not initialize. What is that? Proxy. Could not initialize proxy. Tell me why it is giving this lazy initialization exception, could not initialize proxy. Because to initialize the proxy, what is required for Hibernate? Session is required, but already session is closed. Session is not available in my client. Session is already closed in DO class. You got my point? Yes. Observe the difference now. Could not initialize proxy. What is the reason? No session. No session means session is already closed. There is no session available. Without a session, Hibernate cannot initialize the proxy. Because there is no session available in the client. In the client, there is no session available. No session is there in the client. Client is whatever. Who is the client here? Client is our main class. In main class, we don't have any session of Hibernate. No session. It cannot initialize the proxy. It is giving exception. What is exception? Lazy initialization exception. First, understand this point. First, you have to understand this point. So when Hibernate can initialize a proxy, if there is a session available, exists, if a session is closed, then it cannot. It cannot. Then how can I show the output to you is, okay. The real difference between load, get in a broader transaction point of view, you will learn in Spring or somewhere else. At this point in time, only I can tell you how you can differentiate a load and get methods. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. I will do one thing. I will go to my DO class. I will go to my DO class, okay? And in my DO class, observe it. I want to write first try block, just observe it. Thread.sleep of milliseconds 30,000 means 30 seconds. Catch exception E, and I don't want to print this exception. Observe it. After 30 seconds time, I would like to do one thing. stu system.out.println stu dot get sname. Observe it. Please understand, and you will understand it. It's not a big thing. We can understand everything. Okay. Look at this. stu.getName. Observe it here. I am calling the get sname method. Na? Sname is a is that sname is available in the proxy object? What I told in proxy object, what will be stored? Only ID will be stored. But what I am accessing? Name I am accessing. Name is not available in proxy object. Name is not available in the proxy. Correct? Then what Hibernate will do? Now Hibernate will load the data of this object from database. But to load the data from database, what is required? Session is required. Tell me, session is available now? Because after this line only I got session closed, right? Session is available. Okay, means when I run this program, first which method I called? Load method. After that, how many seconds the application goes to a sleep mode? 30 seconds. Means for 30 seconds of time, you can see your screen. You are not finding any query. But after 30 seconds completed, then what is the method I'm calling? Sname method I'm calling. But sname is not available in this proxy object. Now Hibernate will select the data from database. Okay. Selecting the data from database means you can see one query on the console. What's the query? Select query. When you can see the select query when I run this application? After 30 seconds. After 30 seconds. Let's see. After 30 seconds. Now we'll sit idle for 30 seconds because you're not seeing any query there. We'll wait for 30 seconds here. Half minute. So what happened after half minute? One select query executed and we are getting the data from database. Clear now? Done. So what is the difference between load and get methods? You understood now? Load method can perform lazy loading operation. Get method can perform early loading operation. In a lazy loading, what Hibernate will create? Proxy object. What will be stored in the proxy object is the ID of the object, and that proxy object does not contain the other details. But when other details are loaded from database, whenever we access the data, when you try to access the data for first time, it will load from database. But to load from database, what is required? Session is required. If session is closed already, then if there is no session available, then what exception will be thrown? Lazy initialization exception that will be thrown. But what about get method? What about the get method of Hibernate? Get method will directly load the object from database. It don't wait. It will immediately go to database, will select the object from database. That's all. No lazy loading. It is early loading. That's the difference. Next, one more difference is there. Okay, one more difference is there. Let's come back again. So when you are practicing, you have to practice by doing all these changes. Okay. Next. Here I am calling. Here I am calling get method only. Next. From here I am passing ID number 11012. Tell me once again. Tell me once again. What is the method I am calling? Sorry, what is the ID, SID value I am passing? I am passing what, guys? 11012 I am passing. Do you have 11012 in the database table? We don't have that. We don't have this. Okay. When I call get method, I am calling get method, but this ID value does not exist in this ID value does not exist in the database. It's not there now. If it is not there, then this get method returns null. Tell me once again what the get method returns? Null. Null. It returns null value. Why it is returning null? Because the ID not exist in database. If the given ID not exist in database, then tell me what get method returns? Null. If you call any method on the null object, what exception you can expect here? Null pointer exception. So let us see whether we are getting null pointer exception or not. Wait, because sleep time, how much I gave? 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, what exception you are going to see there? Null pointer exception. Okay. See, you can see there java.lang. What exception you are able to see? Null pointer exception. Yes, you got the null pointer exception over here, right? You got the null pointer exception over here. You got my point now? Right. Null pointer exception, we got it. Nice. I'm just clicking on terminate button here. Red button you have to terminate. Because I'm not closing the factory. If I'm closing the session factory object, it will be automatically terminated. But if I don't close the session factory object in my application, then application will not be terminated. So I have to terminate it manually by clicking on this button. Next, which method next time I want to call? Load. Okay. What? See, when I call get method, what is the value get method returns if the given ID does not exist in the database? Null. Okay. Why I am getting null pointer exception? Because here I am calling the method on null object. If you call any method on a null object, what exception will be thrown? Null pointer exception. Which method next I'm talking about? Load method. Let us execute this code. Let us find out what exception that we are going to get. Okay. Wait for 30 seconds. Why I'm not getting select query? Because I called get method or the load method. Load method I have called. So this differentiation is very, very important in every interview. That almost every interviewer, even me also, I will definitely ask this question. How can you differentiate a load and get methods? Good. What is the exception here? Object not found. It is not null pointer exception. It is what? Object not found exception. Okay, you are getting a message no row with a given identifier exists 11012. Got it? What's the other difference between get and load methods? One difference is what? Get method immediately loads an object from database. It is called early loading. Load method lazily load an object from database. Okay, lazily load in the sense what? First it will create a proxy object and will store the ID of the object in that proxy, returns proxy object. Later, Hibernate will select the data from the database into the proxy. Later means when? Whenever you access the proxy, whenever you access the proxy object, then it will load. First difference. Second difference is what? If the given ID, the primary key value does not exist, then get method returns null value. But load method throws object not found exception. Why I am getting null pointer exception? I got the null pointer exception because I have called a method on the null object. But actually what get method has returned me? Null only, na? Means what get method returns if the ID not exist? Null. What load method will do? Load method does not return null value, na? What it will throw? Object not found exception. That is a difference. That's a difference. Between what and what methods you got the difference? Load method and get method. How many differences you can find? Two differences you can find. Two differences only you can find between load and get methods. Okay, what load method will do? What a load method will do and what a get method will do. Okay, load method will first create a proxy object and will return the proxy object with the ID. The proxy contains ID. But a get method will directly go to the database and then it will get the object from database Which method can directly go to database and get the object? Get method. But which method creates a proxy and returns it? Load method. Load method. Okay. When the proxy is converted to the real object, when you access the proxy data, when you are accessing the data from proxy, then the proxy is converted to real object. What's the meaning of converting a proxy to real? Selecting the data from database. But to select the data from database, what is required for Hibernate? Session. If no session is available by that time, then if no session is available, then exception. What's the exception? Lazy initialization exception. Very good. If the given ID does not exist, then get method returns null value, but load method throws exception. What is the exception name? Object not found exception. Yes. So these are all the differences. Okay. Everyone, write your own description for load and get. I'll wait for a minute. Write your own description for the load and get methods of Hibernate. Try writing. Okay. Try writing something on load and get, whatever you understood on load and get. So please try writing. I'll wait for 2 minutes. No problem. I'll wait for the next 2 minutes. Just recollect whatever you learned in the load and get methods and try to note it down so that you can able to remember it for a long time. Okay. So you can identify some difference between the load and get methods. So that identification is very, very important. But both the methods contains two arguments only. The first argument to the load or get method will be the class name dot class. Second argument will be the ID value. ID value means primary key value. Primary key value. ID value means primary key value. Okay. Right. Now let us identify another important question here. See here. For an example, only I'm talking about a question here. For an example, table is already created. For example, table is already exists in my database. Table is already exists in my database. For example, I have a table in the database which is already exists. Okay. I have a table already. The table already exists in my database. I have the table already. I have the table already. Suppose my table name is something I can write TBL underscore customer. Here you are learning some question here. I'm explaining about a question. I have a table TBL underscore customer, one table. It has columns. Say customer ID, one column is there. There is another column, customer name and city. Assume that what there is a table. The table has already columns. Okay, guys. I have a table and table has what already columns. My table name is what a TBL underscore customer. I have the columns called what cust underscore ID, cust underscore name and city. These are my columns. But what I'm trying to say is I have no primary key in this. Don't expect that this cust underscore ID is primary key. I forgot or I wantedly not created this as a primary key column. Generally, whenever I open a table or whenever I'm explaining a table like this, what we think customer ID will be the primary key column. But what I did now while creating the table, when I'm creating the table, I have not created any primary key column. Yes, we can create the table without primary key. When you don't know about the primary key constraint, when you're learning Oracle or when you're learning SQL queries, when you don't know about any constraint called primary key, you created a table or not? Yes. Means what? I have a table, but the table does not have primary key. Now, this is my customer class. This customer class has customer ID variable. It has customer name variable. It has a customer name and city. And setters, getters are there. You understand my point? Okay, now my doubt is, can I do mapping like this? I want to map this customer class with the customer table. I want to map the customer ID variable with the cust ID column. Customer name with the cust name. City with the city. Question is what? Can we do mapping between this customer class and that customer table or not? Because my doubt is what? Why I'm asking this question? First of all, what is the reason behind it? I don't have any primary key. Na? Do you know mapping file? In a mapping file, Hibernate -mapping tag is there. Inside the tag, you have ID tag. ID tag represents primary key. Correct? But do you have any primary key? No. Question is what here? What is the question I want to ask you? What is my question? What is the question I want to ask you? If a table does not have primary key, what is a table does not have the primary key? Question is what? If a table does not have the primary key, can you able to map your Java class with the database table or not? That question will come. You say simply answer as what? Yes. Then which one you will use as ID? I can use either customer ID as ID, or even I can use customer name also as an ID, or I can use city also as ID. Observe here. While inserting the objects into the table, we will not get any issue. We have no issue. But when we will get an issue? When you are selecting. Because when you are calling the load method or get method, what is the second parameter you are passing? When you are calling the load or a get method, how many arguments it has? 2 arguments are there. What is the first argument? First argument is the class name dot class. Second argument is the ID. Means primary key value na. Suppose 2 times I have the same city, or if I have the same customer ID for 2 times, then which customer will be loaded from the database when I call the get method? Because 2 customers are having the same ID na. You don't have any primary key. If there is no primary key constraint, 2 customers can contain same ID number. When I am calling get method, I need to pass ID value. If I am passing the customer ID value there, which customer will be loaded from database? First customer, second customer, fifth customer, 10th customer. Because all these customers are having the same ID na? Then means what? If the table does not have primary key, we don't have any problem in inserting the data, but we have a problem in retrieving the data, fetching the data. You are getting my point? Right. I mean, very important to understand that if a table does not contain primary key column, can we map our Java class with the database table or not? Yes. No issue in mapping. We can map, we can insert, but we will get an exception, or we will get a problem in retrieval. You are getting my question, right? Everybody is getting my question, right? If a table does not contain primary key, can we map our Java class with the database table or not? What is the answer? Yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do it. We don't get a problem in inserting, but we will get the problem in retrieving. That is the reason why it is recommended that the table must contain a primary key to map the Java class with the database table. Okay, right? So this is important point. Understand it. Next. Everybody catch all these points. Let's move ahead. Now, load operation done. Out of CRUD operations, 2 operations are completed. What are the 2? Inserting, selecting. What are the 2 more things will complete now? Updating, deleting. This application becomes CRUD application. CRUD operations means 4 only now. Out of 4, 2 operations we have completed. Inserting and selecting. What's the next one? Updating. What's the next one? Deleting. They are very simple. I'll go to my, okay, I'm going to my DAO. See here, I'm adding one method for update now. Sure, we'll update. What I do is void or even I can return the updated student also, whatever it is. Student is return type. Update student. Of int SID int marks. Tell me what I want to update now. Marks. For whom? For a student based on the ID. Next, void delete student of SID. Tell me how many operations I'm going to continue. 2 operations more. So let's start with the next operation here. Yeah. What we are performing here? Update student. Sure. But to perform insert or update or delete or first session is required now. Session equal to factory dot open session. Now you want to update now. If you want to update a student or if you want to delete a student, to perform these two, first you have to load the student. First you have to load the student with that ID from DB, then you can do updation or you can do deletion. To delete or to update, first what to do? Load. Load means select the student. Observe here. Transaction. Okay, one thing. Again, I have to explain 2 things here. First point. If I want to load the student from database, do we need a transaction? Optional, right? I told for which operations transaction is mandatory. To perform which operations on database, transaction is mandatory. Inserting, updating, deleting. But what about selection? Suppose my requirement is what? I want to select the student from database. Tell me, transaction is required or not required? Not required. Not required. Observe here. Student S equal to session dot get. I can call load also, but I am calling get. Student dot class, comma, ID. Correct? Observe here. My next question. If I want to update the student, transaction is mandatory now. Okay. What I want to begin now? T equal to session dot begin transaction. Try. During updation, if there is any exception occurred, what I want to say? I want to say that, sorry, updation failed. If no exception occurred, say successfully updated. Correct? Yes. S dot set marks of marks. You know what I'm doing now? What I'm doing here? I'm just going to set the marks. Okay. After setting the marks, then update. How can I update now? Session dot update of yes. Then T dot commit. SOP. What is SOP? Updated. Student is, object is updated. Object is updated. Tell me catch block. What should I write in catch block if there is an exception occurred? T dot rollback. Then what to say? System dot ordered println what? Object is not updated. Guys, return that yes. Observe here. What operation I am performing here? Update operation. To perform either insert or update, whatever it is. Okay. Finally, I forgot. Finally, I should close the session. Now this is correct. Tell me here. First, what I'm doing here? Observe here. First, what I'm doing here? At this line number 74, what I'm doing? I am selecting the object. First, you select the object. Then you update. First, I'm selecting. Then I am setting the new marks. Then I am updating in the database. Right? If everything goes well, then commit the transaction. If some exception occurred, then roll back. Finally, close the session. So which operation is done? Update. Tell me, how can you update an object in Hibernate? First, get the object from database. Then set the new data. Then update. First, get the object from database. Then set the new values. Then update it. If there is a problem in updation, then roll back. Done. What is the next operation? This is update. Next one is delete now. Listen here. Tell me, to delete also session is required now? How can I create a session object? Factory dot open session. Without a session object, Hibernate cannot perform the operations. So what is mandatory? Session object is mandatory. Yeah, session object is ready. What's the next step to do? Load. How can I load it? Student s equal to session dot get first parameter student dot class comma second parameter is what, guys? SID. ID value na SID. Tell me, this is delete na? I told you to perform inserting, updating or deleting operations. What is mandatory in Hibernate? Hibernate can perform these operations only within a transaction. So transaction is mandatory for Hibernate to perform these operations. So how can I begin a transaction? Transaction T equal to, come on, session dot begin transaction. Are you clear? Yes. Start the try block. Start the try block. In try block, session dot delete of yes. Okay. SOP object is deleted. T dot commit. Got my point? Tell me, catch. Exception E. If there is an exception occurred, what to say? Roll back. SOP object is not deleted. Simple. Finally, what to do? Session dot close. No return statement is required here, because what's the return type here? Void. Void means it should not return any value now. Good. So tell me, what are the two more operations I have added now immediately, fastly? One is the update and next one is the delete. Now let us go to the tester code. Tester code. Already we have tested this. I'll keep this in comment. Okay. What I want to do next? What is the next step? I want to update. I will call the method. See, student s equal to DAO dot, what's the method name? Update student 11011 comma 750 or 799. Observe here. What is the current marks of the student ID 11011? 600. You got my point or not? Yes? Right. Understand me. What's the point I'm saying now? I'll try to explain you. Observe here. Okay, what's the marks here? 600. But I want to update this mark 600 to 799. 799. What's the ID of the student? 11011. Let's do. Let's run. System, even I want display the student object. Let's see. Okay, you can see here. What's the marks updated? Okay, what's the message I got? Object is updated. Go and check in the database, in the table. Get the new data from table. Earlier, how much marks you see? Earlier, how much marks are there here? 600. But now the marks are changed to how much? Means this student is updated now? Yes. Tell me what's the next operation to perform? What's the next operation to perform? Delete operation. Let us test delete. We are testing one after the other. So again, I'll keep this code in comment. Right. DAO dot delete student 22022. Currently, I have the record 22022, right? Yes. But now after execution, this row will be deleted. Na? Let's see. Now we got a message called what? Object is deleted. Correct. Deleted. Object is deleted. Correct. Let's go and check. Tell me earlier, I have 2 records, but currently I have only 1 record, that is Rahul. Means what and what operations I did? Updation and deletion. Totally my DAO class contains how many methods here? 4 methods I have defined in my DAO class. For the first method, yesterday we completed that. Yesterday we have completed which method? Save student. Today, what are the new methods I have included? Load student, update student, then delete student. Nothing but what operations we performed? CRUD operations using Hibernate. This is the pure Hibernate application. I mean, we are not using any JPA. It is without JPA, without any annotations. Are you finding any annotations here? No. You are observing there. Override. But this is core Java annotation. It is Java SC annotation, Java core Java annotation, right? But it is not belongs to Hibernate or JPA. Nothing but our current application is purely Hibernate application. And this is the first and last example with pure Hibernate application. From the next example onwards, our application is what? JPA application, not the pure Hibernate. JPA with Hibernate as provider. JPA is a specification. Provider is Hibernate. Means we are going to work with Hibernate with JPA. This is Hibernate with JPA or without JPA. So Hibernate without JPA means you write applications like this. But nowadays it is not recommended to write code like this. Because today we are all working with JPA with Hibernate. Or we can say Hibernate with JPA, not pure Hibernate. Not pure Hibernate. Okay, right? Are you getting my point? Clear about all these things now? Very good. This is the example we have completed today. This is to perform what operations? CRUD operations. CRUD operations or CRUD operations, whatever you feel. Okay, right? How can you update this object in database? How can you update the object in database? First, you load the object, select the object from database, then set the new values, then update. How can you delete an object from database? Select the object from database and delete. You're getting my point or not? See here, what I'm doing here, what I'm doing in this line, I'm selecting the object from DB. What I'm doing here, deleting. Means how to delete an object? Select the object from DB, then delete. Okay, how to update the object? Select the object from DB, set the new values, then update. Okay, and to load the object from DB, what are the 2 methods you have? Load method and get method. One method will perform lazy loading operation and the other method will perform early loading operation. You got my point now? Right. So